Hello, my name is Selwyn Varghese, and I'm here part of Stelcow Pharmaceuticals to introduce our new medication. It's called Utide. Molibutide is our generic name, and we'll be going through our drug development process with our directors of clinical, regulatory, marketing, and medical affairs to talk to you about how we're going to get our drug through the drug development process.
My name is Grace Nguyen. I am the director of the clinical development team, and today I'm going to present to you our clinical development plan of our new drug, Utide, brand name or generic name Molibutide. Before we delve into the phases of clinical studies, I would like to give you a brief overview of our potential new drug, Molibutide. It is a long-acting glucagon-like peptide or GLP-1 receptor agonist, which works by enhancing glucose-dependent insulin secretion from the pancreatic beta cells, suppressing elevated glucagon secretion and slowing gastric emptying. Ultimately, it works to improve glycemic control while reducing body weight. According to Garber's article, a review of efficacy and tolerability of long-acting GLP-1 receptor agonists, clinical trial data suggested that long-acting GLP-1 receptor agonists produce superior glycemic control with better tolerability compared to their short-acting counterparts. Some anticipated adverse effects are nausea, vomiting, headache, and contraindication in those with family history of medullary thyroid cancer, multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2. Though with similar properties to exenatide, molibutide is believed to have greater long-term effects in glycemic control, weight reduction, and low risk of hypoglycemia than exenatide long-release formulation. The primary indication of molibutide is for long-term glycemic control in type 2 diabetes in adults. In addition, its secondary indication is to control body weight, targeting type 2 diabetic patients with obesity with BMI greater than 30. After the preclinical studies in animal and approval of IND and clinical study protocol, we are given permission to progress to clinical trials in humans. All trials must follow GCP or good clinical practice and register on clinicaltrials.gov prior to enrollment of the first patient. The objective of Phase 1 clinical trials is to report adverse effects, toxicity, pharmacodynamics, and pharmacokinetics and determine the maximum tolerated dose. Primary safety outcomes are development of acute pancreatitis and renal and hepatic function. Phase 1 is studied in 100 healthy adult volunteers for the duration of 6 months. Phase 2's main objective is to study the efficacy of molibutide and determine the optimal dose. Its primary efficacy outcomes are HbA1c control and lowering self-monitoring blood glucose levels. Primary safety outcomes are again development of acute pancreatitis and renal and hepatic function. It is studied in 500 adult volunteers with type 2 diabetes for the duration of 18 months. Phase 3 of clinical trials aim to determine molibutide's therapeutic effect and safety in comparison to standard therapy, in this case exenatide long-acting release formulation. Primary outcomes are HbA1c at 12 and 24 weeks. Secondary outcomes are body weight after 24 and 52 weeks of treatment. Adverse effects are nausea, vomiting, hypoglycemic episodes, and injection site reactions. Phase 3 is studies in 2,000 adult volunteers with type 2 diabetes for the duration of 36 months. Phase 4's objective is to monitor for long-term safety and tolerability and report any rare, serious, or long-term adverse effects. Primary efficacy outcomes are HbA1c, self-monitoring blood glucose, and body weight. Primary safety outcomes are reported via the FDA Adverse Events Report System and MedWatch. Phase 4 is studied in all patients initiated on molibutide for type 2 diabetes for the duration of minimum of 2 years and ongoing for the duration of the drug in the market. Here's the timeline of phases of clinical trials. Clinical trials begin with phase 1 in May 2018 and continue through phase 4, which goes for the duration of the drug. As drug experts, pharmacists play a critical role in almost every aspect of clinical development. Pharmacists take part in designing and reviewing clinical trial protocol, focusing on the drug profile from indications to administration, dosage, adverse effects, contraindications, and drug interactions. Pharmacists are also involved directly with clinical trials in preparing and dispensing medications for the studies. In addition, pharmacists are responsible for monitoring medication safety and efficacy and reporting any adverse effects. In essence, with advanced knowledge in drugs pharmacology, pharmacokinetics, toxicology, and medication use, pharmacists contribute greatly to the success of clinical development and can be a great resource for other professions. I will leave it to the Regulatory Affairs Department.
Thank you, Grace. My name is Chris. I'm the director over at Regulatory Affairs for the program. I'm going to be going over a little bit about our timeline and what we're expecting to have to file with the FDA. So the first thing we're going to be doing, we've actually already completed it, is a pre-IND meeting. It's a Type B meeting. And basically all we did was we reviewed and reached an agreement on the design of the animal studies. Some positive outcomes that came from that is that we saved time and money by getting the exact data needed by the FDA to move forward. In addition, we're going to have to schedule 2 other meetings. The first one's going to be the end of phase 1 meeting. It's a Type B meeting. We're expecting it to be scheduled around July 25th of 2018. And what we're going to be doing at that meeting is to review phase 1 data and work with the FDA to ensure that phase 2 trials are successful. The second type of meeting that we're going to have to schedule is going to be scheduled for September of 2019, and that's the end of phase 2 and pre-NDA meeting. The objective of that meeting is to bring information about using the priority review voucher, which we plan to submit, and a summary of our clinical trials and proposed labeling. The priority review voucher is one that we're going to purchase from another company. What it does is that it's going to decrease the average review time for the FDA from 12 months to 6 months, and we're hoping that will accelerate the drug approval and introduction to market. The filing strategy for the NDA is that currently GLP-1 agonists such as molybdenum are second-line therapy for patients with type 2 diabetes. One of the things that we showed is that one of the things we want to mimic is the SCALE trial, which showed the weight loss benefits of another GLP-1 agonist, liraglutide. So we're going to mimic a trial similar to that. Our focus is going to be on the weight loss benefits of molybdenum and how there's a growing number of adolescents with type 2 diabetes. We want to focus on how our formulation is an easy to remember 1 week dosing, weekly dosing. And then we also want to do another trial that's similar to the Award 4 trial, which showed the benefits of the GLP-1 agonist over insulin glargine. The value of the industry pharmacist in regulatory affairs is the high scientific literacy. We're one of the few professions that has specific classes to look at just how to read and analyze data. We have a better understanding of where a new drug can provide benefit over current standard of care. And we are good at summarizing complex data from clinical studies into a well-structured digest. Thank you. After this, we're going to have Harrison from Medical Affairs go over his part.
Thank you, Chris, for the introduction. Hi, my name is Harrison Yun, and I'm the Director of Medical Affairs. The Medical Affairs team will have a part in a variety of roles in Phase 1 to Phase 4. We will ensure that physicians feel connected, provide rationale for the entire drug development program, and establish a rapport with the external stakeholders. The team is also responsible for medical introduction of a therapy and scientific support in the post-marketing period, as well as communicating with the sales department regarding molybdenum and the disease state. Our medical science liaison team will be formed 24 months pre-launch. In the early stages, their main roles will revolve around understanding the disease landscape and to develop the architecture and the game plan of how our drug should affect the disease state and what new paths and doors may be opened as a result. During this time, they will also provide clinical and scientific expertise to establish relationships within the medical community. The medical information team will be formed 24 months prior to launch and be a key part of addressing key concerns of the drug, such as safety, efficacy, dosing, and administration. After the drug has been on the market, medical response letters will be issued to patients and healthcare providers at their disposal. During this time, the team will largely transition to web-based functions to facilitate the interaction with healthcare providers. 24 months prior to launch, the medical publication team will provide presentations, posters, and abstracts for all related publications. After the drug approval, they will also play a critical role in developing clear and consistent language for publications when Molybdetide will start to be incorporated into therapeutic programs. After the launch of Molybdetide, the drug safety team will carefully look out for adverse events and clinical effects of Molybdetide to provide accurate data on its pharmacokinetic profile. The Health Economics Outcomes Research Team will be formed 12 months pre-launch and work with clinical experts of the disease state to identify possible gaps that Molybdetide can fill with its therapy. The team will also provide initial cost analysis of Molybdetide to ensure that it will remain competitive in the market. The marketing team will implement the early data and analyze further trends in cost and efficacy values. There are key components of the medical science liaison team that should be discussed prior to its formation. Only healthcare professionals will be given off-label information about Molybdetide by medical science liaisons, reactively and unsolicited. That is, the information must be objective and given only when inquired by the healthcare professional. MSLs will also regularly attend conferences to further develop relationships with external stakeholders. After UTIDE's launch, KOL outreach will maintain relationships with our key opinion leaders and keep them up to date on the latest trials of GLP-1 agonists and how they can impact our plan. Now here's Dr. Kelly Dacus to provide more information on the value of pharmacists in medical affairs.
I'm Kelly Dacus, and I was asked to speak with you a little bit about the role of pharmacists within the pharmaceutical and biotech industry, and more specifically, the value and the unique position that pharmacists are in within the medical affairs function of a pharmaceutical or biotech company. Having worked as an MSL for 14 years, I think I can give you very specific examples of how pharmacists work within the medical affairs function and the value that they bring to both external stakeholders as well as the pharmaceutical organization. First of all, I think it's a well-known fact that many pharmaceutical and biotech companies are located on one of the two coasts. And so by using specifically medical liaisons, this is a way for pharma and biotech companies to have a local medical presence that's available to not only physicians but also other healthcare practitioners, so that there's someone there who can respond to requests for medical information. Many times there are questions that arise that a sales representative can't answer from the information contained within a package insert. And so by using pharmacists as medical liaisons, then the sponsor or the pharmaceutical company has the ability to respond to these requests for medical information. Secondarily, many companies also use their medical liaisons to work in clinical development type roles, so specifically working with clinical research sites. Pharmacists specifically are very well positioned to educate all of the staff at a clinical research site on the specifics of the investigational therapy. And again, who better to do this than someone who has a pharmaceutical background, someone who can explain the drug formulation, the rationale for the storage, the handling, the preparation of the dosage, potential side effects, and even how that new potential therapeutic would fit in with a patient's current regimen. Thirdly, pharmacists are also very well positioned, and specifically well positioned compared with peers such as physicians or nurse practitioners or PAs, because those other professions are trained more on the physiology, pathophysiology, and diagnosis of disease, whereas pharmacists tend to think more about the therapeutic aspect, and again, how the therapeutics would be fitting into a patient's current regimen, how it would affect patient adherence, patient preference for dosage form, etc. And by identifying the unmet needs in a particular disease state, then pharmacists can help advance a particular therapeutic, not only through clinical development, but also through post-marketing activities once the product has been approved by the FDA.
As Harrison mentioned before, he mentioned our health economics and outcome research. I'm here to flesh that all out for you, our shareholders, as well. My name is Salman Varghese, and I'm here to share with you our health economics and outcomes research. When it comes to our company's ideal health economics and outcomes research plan, we plan on using a standalone prospective study. We believe that the flexibility gives us a vital part in making our plan an informative one. We believe that following our patients in their natural setting is a key component to making sure our product is considered a useful one. Diabetes medications tend to be a lifestyle change, so watching these patients over time is a key factor in making sure we have the best product available for our patients. In terms of actual studies being utilized, it is important that we have studies in the pre-launch of our medication. As we've done before, we've already finished our epidemiological studies. In those, we show the clinical impact of our disease. By showing the natural progression of the disease of diabetes and show how the impact of that on the patient, we can get our shareholders and our companies ready for the medication at hand. Burden of illness studies. This study would show the effect that the progression of the disease would have on patients not properly treated by the medications already on the market, not being treated at all, and most importantly, the burden that it would place on the employers of our shareholders and our patients, along with the economic burdens of the diabetes being untreated. This study will show us and show our shareholders the importance of our medications because of the negative economic burden that the diabetes puts on our patients' lives and their employers' life. Unmet needs studies. This study is intended to look closely at the alternate treatments on the market. We want to focus on the low patient satisfaction with the rest of the medications on the market. We will discuss the effectiveness and other plans and other factors that can lead to lower adherence of the GLP-1 agonist medications. Now, these studies could be proven to be particularly effective when it is targeted to specific groups that have a vested interest in patient adherence to the medication, such as employers, insurers, providers, and patients. Also, we have to keep in mind the post-launch studies that can affect the health economics and outcome research of the medication. The profit benefit studies. By showing how our product is different from the other GLP-1 agonists on the market, we can show the value of our new medication. There are different ways to show this value, but we will focus on the patient-reported benefits and healthcare use. By showing how our patients reported satisfaction and tolerability with the medication, the value of the medication is seen better, since this is considered to be a lifestyle change. Economic evaluations. First, we'll mention our cost-effective modelness. This study will be intended to show how UTIDE is worth the cost. The key in our study will be to show the representatives of the insurance companies the incremental value of our medication compared to the ones already on the market by pulling information from our trials that we have already completed and the ones from our competitors such as Victoza. We intend on showing through the benchmarks of diabetes control the performance of our medication in a 2-year range. Budget impact model. This study is to show how UTIDE will affect the bottom line. First, we will show how our medication UTIDE will affect the budgets of various pharmacies and medical budgets. The difference will be to show insurance companies that our medications should be on the formulary for the wider population by showing the per member per month cost. This will be calculated by taking 1 million members during a 12-month process. We want to ensure that our product is considered a standard for the diabetes care by showing our cost of our medication is offset by the effectiveness and dosing. Formulary restriction analysis. In this analysis, we will research and analyze the possible restriction that our medication might face on the market with formularies such as high copays, prior authorizations, and such. By looking at this sort of research, we can evaluate the impact that any formulary restriction would have on our medication. We want to make sure that it is very clear the effect that PBMs and insurers would have on our medications. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shanik Shah and I'm the Marketing Director. I'd like to talk to you about our potential medication, molnupiravir, also known as Utide. Our target audience includes healthcare providers such as physicians, pharmacists, nurses, healthcare administration such as pharmacy and therapeutics community, also known as the P&T community, payers such as PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, potential patients, and lastly, the stockholders. In 2012, there were 189 million cases of type 2 diabetes. Out of those, only 120 million were treated. So there was a gap of around 70 million that still needed some sort of treatment. Diabetes is a large growing market with a market cap of around $28.1 billion, with many generic and me-too drugs available. By 2022, the number of cases is expected to grow to 330 million, with global sales rising to $67.7 billion in the upcoming 4 years. In 2017, Novo Nordisk, also known as Victoza, had the largest market share of GLP-1 class therapy. Its sales grew by 11% in 2016, but had a decrease in market share due to competition from Trulicity and Byetta from AstraZeneca. Trulicity had a 272% growth rate increase in sales from 2015 to 2016. Byetta had a slow yet progressive 2016 global sales ranging from $254 million. Why Utide? Utide is a glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist, also known as GLP-1 agonist, that treats type 2 diabetes by regulating the amount of blood sugar levels in the body, as well as obesity by slowing down gastric emptying and decreasing food intake. For patients in need of a type 2 diabetic medication that's user-friendly, long-lasting, and cost-effective, Utide is your answer. The core brand message is that Utide is a once-weekly injectable medication. Patients can have a greater adherence with therapeutic dosing and cost-effective savings compared to other GLP-1 agonist medications. To get our brand name out, our marketing sales force includes informative materials that will be able to spread awareness of our product and get it to people who need it the most. And we'll have key account managers, marketing managers, sales managers, market researchers, end users, and legal representatives. Some marketing mediums that we'll use is sales representatives, print and electronic advertisements such as journals, internet banners, manufacturer discount cards, continuing education such as online and face-to-face, professional conferences and exhibits worldwide. These marketing mediums will help us reach our goal for Utide to be an innovative and disrupting player in the treatment of diabetes.